Greetings, Blazer community. This is your Superintendent Caroline Hernandez Padala. We're here today with the capital project presentation to explain the vote that will be put forth through the public on May 21st, 2024. You'll see throughout this presentation the current existing conditions of our buildings and some plans or projections for what the buildings could look like in the event that the vote in May is a positive one. Additionally, we'll talk about the finances that would be required in order to make all this come through. If you look at this first picture, this is an example of the many roof leaks here at the Millbrook Middle School. This leak has a catch basin with a tube diverting water away from the food prep area in the Millbrook Middle School ceiling in the kitchen. In subsequent slides like this one, you'll see the conditions of some of the roofs in our classroom. This is a major health and safety issue, as every time there is a significant storm, be it rain or snow with melting runoff, we end up with water damage just like this. In some cases, as you can see right above our clocks, our bell system, and you'll see in another video above electrical outlets and some of our speakers, enunciators. We have here some examples of the water damage to our floors and tunnels that is a result of some of the roof leaks and some drainage issues that we have around our buildings. As you can see, there's a couple of inches of water in this particular area of the tunnels running underneath our buildings, and that's some of our exposed piping in the tunnels as well. In terms of the heating and plumbing in our buildings, you can see that some of our pipes are very rusty. At this point in time, we have some steam pipes running under our building that have actually had puncture holes in them that have had to be repaired by our maintenance crews. This is simply to keep our buildings heated and safe for occupancy. These are some of the issues that we're looking to fix throughout this capital referendum. I know that throughout this presentation, we're going to be talking about some large dollar figures. However, we really wanted to summarize in advance and allow people to understand fully what the impact would be to the average household. As the average assessed value taxable property in the district comes in at $541,278, we used 500,000 as the estimation for this particular presentation. And that would be impacted with $1.60 per day if all three of the project propositions are approved in May. That's roughly a $646 a year increase to your taxes. Just to give you some background information, in 2021, the Millbrook Central School District Administration initiated a large-scale planning process for a capital project as we are describing today. That was at the Board of Education's direction. The last major capital project done in the Millbrook Central School District was the high school that was completed in 2006. Prior to that, there were additions made to Elm and Alden Elementary Schools in the 1990s. And in 2013, there was a reconstruction project that was done to upgrade the Millbrook athletic facilities. Other than that, our buildings remain in their originally constructed state, by and large, with original infrastructure and systems. Just to give you some information regarding the timeline, and you can pause the video and you can review this. This is something that we've been working on for well over a year. Not this past January, but the January prior, we entered into a contracted relationship with the Palumbo Group as the construction management firm, as well as Bernie P. Dunnigan's office for our financial advisement. Additionally, we brought on the folks at BCS as our architectural firm and began discussions with Trane Technologies regarding an energy performance contract. An energy performance contract is, it's a term that's used to explain when we are able to make upgrades to our facilities, specifically those that will save energy costs and will be paid for over time with the savings. So for an example, if we are to put in energy efficient windows to keep the heat that we're producing in the building within the building, and we're able to cut down our utility costs over an approximately 18-year period, we can use the money that we saved to pay off those upgrades that we would do in the coming few years. Additionally, we have been looking at the most energy efficient means for bringing all of those utilities into the district, and all of that will be highlighted on subsequent slides of this presentation. Additionally, we have made some decisions about the scope of the work. You will see all of the details of the work that we plan to do if this vote is a positive one in May. And you will also see nearly $14 million of work that has been cut from the budget scope in order to be the most responsible to our taxpayers and also create a financial package that we will be able to sustain long term. When we started this work, we started with our strategic vision in mind. In parallel to creating the scope of this proposed project, we also worked to create our strategic mission, vision, and values. And so throughout this presentation, you will see some examples of how the pillars, or MCSD as highlighted on the screen, methods, connectedness, sustainability, and discourse, will be improved with the scope of this particular project that we're describing today. Some of the focus areas under methods are the way in which we provide instructional opportunities for our students. When we decided that we were going to embark on this project, and really out of necessity, you'll notice that there's not a whole lot that is posh or fancy. But what we did note is that if we had to, for necessity purposes, to bring safe heating and cooling options into our buildings, as well as replacing the roofs and the envelope, if we were going to be moving walls and moving ceilings, we decided that when we put them back, we were going to make sure that we did it in the best manner in order to provide a world-class education for our students. So you will see there are some makerspace upgrades to the technology, family consumer science classrooms, including a greenhouse, as well as science and library upgrades. We'll also be creating a large group instructional space, because one of the things that is true in Millbrook is we have spaces where 40 kids can meet, and we have spaces where 300 or 400 can meet. What we don't have is a space where we can have one grade level together, where they can actually be working and productive on projects. We'll also be upgrading a robotics field, creating a green screen so that our students will be able to produce small videos. It could be like a news broadcasting booth for the district. And we will also be creating co-work stations. So what that is students can work quietly in pairs or small groups. And currently we don't really have a great space for that where there's noise control. Additionally, maybe one of the most important things that we'll be doing is we'll be bringing specifically the middle school up to ADA compliance. Currently, our middle school meets the compliance requirements from the time in which it was built. In order to make some of the other energy upgrades, if we have to change the area where the stairwells are, then we have to bring it up to code. So we have examined all of the options. And when we get to that, Dr. Watkins and Mr. Garcia will explain the decisions we made for how we will bring the middle school to compliance. We'll also be focusing on things like auditorium lighting and sound. The reason that those are included is because there's actually opportunities to build in efficiency when we're speaking about lightings. The type of lights that we utilize in large gathering areas can actually be a cost savings. We will be renovating the library media center. We will also be upgrading HVAC systems, renovating them in all of our buildings, or at least upgrading the electrical systems that control them. We'll also be changing out our single pane windows for more efficient windows, and we will be doing some tasks in the construction to mitigate for moisture. If you recall, a couple of years back, we had to relocate Elm Drive Elementary School into a wing of the middle school due to mold that grew from moisture issues. Additionally, we will be looking at the replacement of the HVAC system throughout the middle school. And also, we will talk some of the energy performance contract items that are able to help us accomplish this cost neutral. The focus area of discourse is one in which this entire process is based on. We've had a number of information sessions, including those out in the community and some here on campus. We also have monthly board meetings where we have highlighted all of the needs of the district as well as the plan to accomplish some of the more broad changes. And we have worked in community partnerships to be able to make sure that we're getting the word out and our community is informed about the potential for these changes. Additionally, all of the information discussed here and at our info sessions can be found on our website. If you go to our website, there's a prominent tab that says Capital Project. So you can find all of our information there, as well as links to prior board meetings in which some of this information was discussed. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Garcia, who will explain some of the pre-referendum design scope and where we are today.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. As was stated earlier, we broke up this project proposal into 3 propositions. Just as a reminder for those folks that may not have gone through this process before, every May general election and general budget vote, Proposition 1 is the general fund vote. That is next year's operating budget. So when we talk about the project proposals today, we're going to talk about them as Propositions 2, 3, and 4. Those are the 3 phases that we're proposing. And again, just for clarification, the scope of work that we're going to talk about is rather complicated and does build on each other. So the only way for us to package this responsibly was to create a core package of work. That's what you see on the screen here as Proposition 2. And then Propositions 3 and 4 build on Proposition 2 successively. What that means is Propositions 3 and 4 will only happen if Proposition 2 receives a positive vote. Proposition 4 specifically only happens if Propositions 2 and 3 receive a positive vote. So what we're going to explain right now is the scope of work for Proposition 2 as the baseline, the highest level of need project that we've established for this vote, and then the subsequent packages will build upon that. So what you see on your screen now is Proposition 2. This is where the lion's share of the HVAC upgrades and building condition issues that Ms. Hernandez noted earlier are housed in. This proposition package includes full HVAC system redesign and renovations for Elm Drive, Alden Elementary, and Millbrook Middle School. With this, we are actually replacing the entirety of the HVAC system, bringing a different design into the buildings, changing how air flows through the buildings to provide conditioned and filtered air before it reaches the classrooms and instructional spaces. This design will also provide comprehensive cooling to every instructional space in the district throughout all 4 buildings. That is cooling and moisture mitigation. They're not the same thing, but they will be happening in parallel. In order to do that, there is related work that needs to happen. As Ms. Hernandez noted earlier, electrical systems have to be upgraded to support all of the new equipment that's going into our buildings. If we're going to change how we heat the building or cool the building, we want to keep that treated air in the building, and that's where the single pane window replacements come into play, as well as roof repairs and replacements as needed throughout. Specifically, a roof replacement at the middle school. It is the worst condition roof we have. Moisture mitigation solutions will be built right into the HVAC program so that the air that comes into the building, as we recall from 2018, we had that mold and moisture issue throughout the Hudson Valley. This would be pre-treating that air so that it comes into the building dry and filtered. The energy performance contract dovetails very nicely with these energy upgrades. Specifically, we're looking at doing high performance boilers that will allow us to burn both the #2 fuel oil that we burn currently, that many of our homeowners burn in their houses, but also allow us to burn liquid propane, which is a fuel alternative. It does burn cleaner and cheaper, and it is a byproduct of petroleum production. So it is a more sustainable, even though it is still a fossil fuel, it is one of the most sustainable fossil fuels in the sense that it has one of the lower carbon footprints, and it would allow us to not only save money on fuel, but also burn a cleaner fuel when able to. Part of the energy performance contract too, which is somewhat exciting for us, is that we're able to put a 500 kilowatt solar array on the middle school roof. So you're going to hear us talk about the efficiency of design and construction throughout this presentation. This is one of those examples where if we need to replace the largest roof of the largest building in the district, we might as well design it to support a solar array, because New York State does not allow districts to put solar panels on a roof that is more than 6 years old. So you really want to do that kind of a project with a very young or new roof. And instead of putting a new roof on and then a couple of years later trying to go down this route for solar, we figured it would be wise and prudent to design the roof with the solar array in mind, so that we're not putting excessive or additional holes or penetrations into that roofing system. The energy performance contract, as Ms. Hernandez said earlier, is a chunk of work that would be peeled out of this $55 million proposition in order to be tax neutral to the community. And this is a pretty hefty price tag. So I will say that we'll talk more about financing later, but the district is leveraging $10 million in a capital reserve, about over $1 million in fund balance from the current school year, and roughly 19 million in existing debt to help defray the costs of this 55 million. In addition, that energy performance contract is going to shake out to about 7.6 million of that 55. So when we talk more about the money piece later, I'll explain a little bit more in detail how that $55 million number is not a direct impact to the taxpayer, but it does illustrate the comprehensive scope of this proposition package. So if Proposition 2 passes, then we can add the scope of Proposition 3 to the project bundle. And what that does is that starts to introduce instructional improvements and the aforementioned ADA compliance concerns. Now, one of the questions that came up in our previous public forums was, if the ADA compliance is such an issue, why is it not in the first proposition bundle? And as Ms. Hernandez alluded to earlier, the system we have is compliant with the code of the design of the building at the time of the last construction period. It is not necessarily to current code. And a lot of the equipment that's used in the current ADA compliance system we have at the middle school is operational, but the equipment is at its end of useful life. Replacement parts and materials are very hard to come by. At any point in time, we can have a piece of equipment in a state of disrepair, and it could take days, weeks, or months to effect that repair. So we're really making proactive upgrades to bring us into current compliance, but also to allow us to provide a better and higher level of service to anyone with mobility challenges, be them staff, student, or community member. So that's why that's in this bundle. It would also, Proposition 3's project bundle allows us to add a secure vestibule to Elm Drive Elementary School. This is to further enhance the already existing security at that location. We would be adding an expanded walk-in freezer to the Millbrook Middle School kitchen. For those that are unfamiliar, our middle school kitchen is one of our largest kitchens and does serve as the central hub of our school food program. We would also like to make auditorium lighting and sound improvements as well. Fine and performing arts are a big highlight of what we do here. Our student performers are amazing, and we want to be able to not just upgrade how they're presented, but also the efficiency of the lighting and sound equipment in those spaces. At the high school, we start to get into some really fun things that Dr. Watkins will explain a little bit in further detail later on, in terms of renovations to the Library Media Center, the science classrooms directly there above, the auditorium, and weight room ventilation is just simply, the weight room was a room that was converted after the original construction. Again, the high school is the youngest building we have. Some people ask, why would we have such an intensive need there? These are mostly enhancements or things that we just couldn't do at original construction that we now have the flexibility and the vision to be able to address in this current project bundle. So Proposition 4 is the last bit of scope of work that we would like to address in this project, in this overall project. And this scope of work, again, builds upon the previous two. So this only happens if the previous two project proposals do receive a positive vote. This would include adding a greenhouse to Millbrook Middle School. That is a direct complement to our Family and Consumer Sciences program. A large group instructional space, as Ms. Hernandez referenced earlier. This brings science lab renovations to Millbrook Middle School, a school that was constructed in 1960 or thereabout. So you're talking about science labs that have roughly a 60-year vintage to them, and bringing them up to current instructional and program needs and codes and things like that. It would also allow us to do some structural work at the high school, specifically addressing a retaining wall that is in need, as well as restoring the historic gazebo at Elm Drive Elementary School and opening that up as an outdoor learning space with a lot of upside and potential for our students and community. As Ms. Hernandez noted earlier, in addition to all the things we'd love to do, there's a number of items that we just couldn't get to, right? There's about $14.2 million in scope that we originally did entertain, but as this project grew and as we started to look at what the most critical needs are for the district, our students, and our community, there was just some things that we had to put to the back of the list. Unfortunately, those items are listed here. That would include traffic augmentations to Elm Drive and Alden, as well as the main campus. It would be internal reconfigurations at Elm and Alden. We had looked at adding a new cafeteria and moving the office, the main office location and the kitchen at Alden Elementary as well. Wonderful things that we would love to address in the future. We do still have them on our project list. Unfortunately, there was just no clean and easy way to incorporate that into the 3 project bundles we have and still make this a financially feasible project. So here are some examples of building conditions. You saw some of these photos during our introductions, but allow me to just further illustrate, as Ms. Hernandez said before, you can see how some of our equipment is directly affected by the roof leaks and floods that we have. Emergency lights having leaks in them. The picture in the lower center area, that was a Wi-Fi access point that was flooded and damaged due to roof leaks. Our food service line, where we put, again, the middle school kitchen, like I said, was the food service hub for the district. And you can see the picture on the left is a tarp diverting water that was leaking directly above the service line into a catch basin so that we could make lunch and breakfast that day. These are high levels of need, and our maintenance team is doing a great job of putting Band-Aids where they can, but there's some rather intensive needs for upgrades, as you can see. As we continue, you'll see another photograph. This is oddly enough, or I say ironically, in our Project Lead the Way college level pre-engineering program classroom. And we've got water infiltrating into that space where we have probably our most expensive PCs for student engineering and learning, as well as our technology-driven equipment. We go on further, we can show you illustrations of what we talked about with ADA compliance. So right now, the Millbrook Middle School is a tiered building. It has 3 levels, 4 if you count the auditorium lobby. They're connected by these corridor stairwells, if you will, as the building is tiered into the side of the hill. That is a collapsible chair lift, what you see circled in the center picture. When that lift is collapsed, it takes up roughly 20% of the passable space in that corridor and stairwell. When that lift is engaged and operational, it takes up that entire half of the stairwell, which cuts down our capacity for traffic and passability in those spaces. Furthermore, and I think most concern is even when these systems are fully functional, our superintendent graciously and personally tested the system with our maintenance staff, and just to illustrate the point here, that it takes roughly 8 to 10 minutes for a student or staff member, anybody with mobility challenges, to traverse from the 3rd level to the lower level on the lift system. Just for context, our student academic periods are 41 minutes at the middle school. So that means a person, a student, or a teacher with mobility issues would be sacrificing roughly 25% of their instructional time just to get to and from their classes. So again, does it work? It's currently functional today. Is it ideal? Certainly not. Can we do better? Yes, we can. We want to do better, right? These are enhancements not just to make people feel included and part of our community, but it's compliance with law, and it's also to give them a fair chance at a appropriate education. As we continue, you'll see an example of our single pane window systems. If we put thermal cameras on the building, you can see in the dead of winter, the heat just bleeds right out of the building envelope. That is your exterior walls and your roof connections. So all of that would be addressed as we improve how we heat and how we cool. It improves how we contain that treated air in the buildings. And again, just as water comes in above, so does below. Part of this project is going to be to address water infiltration at the ground level and in our subterranean tunnels. And the ripple effects of that water is these floor tiles that pop up here, there, and everywhere. And again, our maintenance staff has done a great job of patchwork and repairs. But some of these floor tiles, it's worth noting, are asbestos-containing material. And if a number or large enough area is damaged, it will actually take an instructional space out of play for a day or a given number of days while repairs are effected. So once again, you're seeing the theme of much needed repairs that are not just to enhance instruction, but to allow for instruction or to minimally not prevent instruction. And here's another example just of the infrastructure for our heating systems. You know, these are steel pipes that were put in the 1950s and 60s. As these building systems are rated for viability and replacement cycles, they're typically given a 50-year lifespan, and we're about 10 to 15 years beyond that in some of our buildings and sections. So they've given us all they can, but they're starting to fail. They're starting to rust, pit, and create leaks throughout. And we're doing the best we can to prevent it, but it is time to address a full-scale renovation. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Watkins because while I've spent a lot of time talking about the things you can't see, there's a number of enhancements that we're going to be doing that directly relate to program and instruction that are going to be enhancing the lives of our children. What you've heard many of us say at other presentations is when we look to open up walls and floors and ceilings, as you've heard myself and Ms. Hernandez state throughout the presentation, it only makes sense to really be intentional about what that room and that space is going to look like when we put it back together. So we would never make these decisions without an instructional lens on the problem, because if we know that we need to repair or replace entire walls, roofs, and sections, we really want to put them back together in a cost-effective way that is most impactful to our kids. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Watkins, and she can walk you through some of the examples of design ideas that we're looking at for the program side of the project.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. So at any point during this section, you may want to pause the slideshow just so that you can zoom in on any of these pictures. There's also still photos on our website that you can also look more closely at these. But basically on this slide, what you're seeing is of the middle school, the current conditions that are within the scope of the capital project. So really focusing on the science classrooms, the family and consumer science area, that large group instruction, our library space, and the technology space. If we look at design examples, again, these are just renderings of what it could look like if the vote is positive. A great deal of time would be spent with the architects and the teachers in these spaces to really look at the needs of our students, to make sure that they are designed according to what their curriculum is requiring students to have access and be able to do. So you can see in the lower right-hand corner where the purple and the pink are, that's really focusing on our family and consumer science area. So currently in our family and consumer science area, we don't have ovens for the students to actually cook anything that they are preparing. So that limits the types of lessons that our teacher can do with them. In addition, really looking at the opportunity for a greenhouse. So within the area of which we live, providing opportunities for our students to explore agriculture and watching the benefit of growing your own food and what we're able to do with that, including donating to the Millbrook Library, where there is a food pantry there for all of our residents, and that sustainable piece. In addition, our technology classroom, as you've seen the pictures with the water damage, just looking at how do we support this Project Lead the Way classroom and providing a space that lends itself to what post-secondary experiences our students would need to be prepared for if they were to choose engineering. And part of this programming, I know it did come up in one of our presentations, why would we create these spaces within the districts when our students could go to a BOCES program, our career tech programs? Part of the answer is we have limited seats. So we have approximately 30 seats. So that is limited to approximately 15 students in 11th grade and 15 students in the 2-year program continuing as 12th graders. And with that, if we had 5 students that wanted to go into cosmetology, that doesn't mean Millbrook has access to all of those 5 seats within the cosmetology program, because again, it's a regional program for all the schools within Dutchess County. Same would go for the culinary arts program that BOCES offers. So even if our students have desire, it is a very competitive program for our students and throughout the region. So it is important for us to be able to provide these opportunities specifically at middle school, so that our students have a well-rounded exposure to the types of programming that is available for future professions in the area. In addition, we've talked about the library expansion, and that is just allowing for more conducive spaces to the co-working environment while being surrounded by the literature that's needed, also giving them that opportunity to do the collaboration, and then the additional classroom for the large group space, and a sampling of how the stair lift could look. We've talked about the ADA compliance, and you can see at the 3 renderings from the middle school, that lower section is that auditorium section that you would see in the building. That was one of the areas that we spoke of, that if we have any individuals with mobility challenges, they cannot get from the auditorium to a bathroom on that first floor without going up the stairs. So again, we want to be mindful of the productions that we'd love to offer our community and provide access to everyone. But all of those blue areas are where our current lifts are, and in the proposal, it would be adding elevators to those areas. And it's important for our residents to know that the Capital Project Committee really did their due diligence in doing a cost comparison between elevators versus new stair lifts, and looking at the longevity of both of those options. And elevators definitely won out, because there's less construction actually that's required due to the amount of footprint that those take up. These are, again, and you'll want to stop the slideshow, I'm sure, just to look a little bit more closely, the before of our current science/maker spaces and what they could look like if we do have a positive vote. And then again, the large group classroom, if we were able to create this large group space, how we can have flexible seating for the students to allow for multiple small areas, in addition to having a large space for the entire grade level to come together for different experiences. Here you'll see the technology area, which centers around our Project Lead the Way curriculum. So in the current space on the left, you'll see where the computers are along the perimeter. You may notice some of those areas in the ceilings are near where the water damage is. So we do have to have our due diligence on being careful where we place our equipment. And then on the right-hand side of the screen is just a rendering, again, of what the space could look like if we have a positive vote. This is another example of the family consumer science, just blowing up those pictures a little bit from that first diagram. So you can see the culinary arts in that middle picture, having the ovens along the side and in the middle to allow those stations to complete those projects as they're assigned, in addition to the pictures down below where you'll see, the additional electricity coming from the ceiling for safety reasons, and the greenhouse continuing the work that our teacher has already started. And these are just some examples, again, of what a library in its current condition. On the top left is what the entire library that you see for the middle school, and looking at expanding that space. So it is a more open space and allows for small groups and whole class presentations. Again, you'll see some additional pictures of the auditorium. So this is when you enter from the auditorium in the parent drop-off area, and creating a simulation of a lift for elevator lift to bring parents up to where the bathrooms are. And this is just some examples of what those lifts could look like. So at the high school, some of the exciting things, even though it is one of our newest spaces, our library was, keep in mind that the original scope of the high school was cut back. So some of that did impact the design principles that were initially put forward. So looking at that and what is being asked of our graduates, we wanted to take advantage of the opportunity. As you've heard all of us say, we don't want to open up a wall unless we're looking at all aspects of what can happen in that space. So in order to address some heating and cooling issues on the second floor of the library, where those science classrooms are, that provided an opportunity for us to look again at the library. So currently our library doesn't really have those quiet spaces or small group spaces where we could bring a classroom down to do research and or small group work. Students could sign out from the cafeteria if they want to do some additional studying with a partner or a friend or independently. You also heard Superintendent Hernandez talking about the green screen. One of the great opportunities for our students is to practice public speaking and also connection with our curriculum with journalism. So if we were to create with a green screen a morning show and or broadcast show, that would give our students the opportunity to do that in that space, and they could have both the in front of the camera and behind the camera exposure to build their knowledge and also perhaps spark interest in what they would like to pursue post-secondary. And again, you can see these are just renderings of things that could be possible if we do have a positive vote. We would obviously work with our principal, our current library media specialist, and of course our students on what types of things would drive them into the library more. So you can see there's some small group areas, some larger group areas. So if a teacher was to bring their whole class down, of course the green screen, and that would include all of the equipment after behind the scenes as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Assistant Superintendent Garcia so he can fill you in on the numbers.
Thanks, Dr. Watkins. So we're going to start with the energy performance contract information, and we're going to start with a little Energy Star data. You've heard us talk about conservation and sustainability as one of our pillars, certainly a focal point of this work. When you're dealing with intensive HVAC upgrades and repairs, there's a natural lean into that conservation and sustainability movement, as it is a pretty significant load that we're putting on our buildings when we do this work, and we want to be as strategic and intentional as possible. So just some background information. Many of you have heard about Energy Star ratings for commercial buildings in general. For a building to be Energy Star certified, it needs a score of 75 or better. Now, the average school in America has an Energy Star rating of 67. It's no secret that schools in the United States need work. Back in 2013, the EPA did a study with the National Board of Schools that said that the average school in the country needed $4.5 million in repairs just to get up to good condition. This is going back almost over 10 years. So you can imagine how those numbers have inflated since. With that being said, we are far from a score of 67 or 75. Our best scored building is our high school with an Energy Star rating of 38. And that is our newest building that's just about 20 years old, 18 years old to be specific. Elm Drive Elementary is our worst scored building. It is also one of our smallest buildings. It has an Energy Star rating of 6. It uses 11 times more energy than the national average. What's even more startling is if you advance to the next slide, you can see that we normalized the BTUs in terms of energy consumption across all buildings, and Elm Drive Elementary is our highest consuming building in terms of electrical consumption. It's also not just the smallest building, but it's open the least amount of time in any given day, right? Our high school operates, 12 to 16 hours a day, pretty regularly throughout the year. And there's if there's going to be any summer activity, it happens at the high school too. Elm Drive is probably utilized the least. It's one of the smallest. It is largely the biggest consumer of energy we have. When we were looking at these statistics with our partners at Trane Technologies, we were informed that Elm Drive Elementary's energy consumption is comparable to some local hospitals in our area. You're talking about a medical facility that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with high levels of complex heating and cooling equipment throughout. And here we are in our little elementary school, and we're burning as much energy per square foot as some of those medical facilities are. So these are the kind of things that we're looking to remediate as part of the energy performance portion of these projects. So here's a summary of what the energy performance contract will include. So you can see up in the upper left, there's LED lighting, right? So we currently have T8 fluorescent lights throughout most of the district. This is 30-year-old technology, give or take. So it doesn't seem that long ago that everybody was taking out incandescent lights and putting in fluorescents and compact fluorescents. But even those are now 30 years old and considered obsolete in the industry. We would be doing the high efficiency boilers that I referenced earlier with the dual fuel capability for liquid propane and #2 fuel oil. Upgrading our energy management system. Right now, for those that are not aware, our facilities department is running roughly 16 to 18 hours a day. We have people in district as early as 4 or 5 a.m. to activate our boiler plants manually. We have staff that are modulating that system on and off all day long. We have staff that are here as late as 11 or 12 o'clock at night to shut down the boilers, again, manually, to save some fuel when nobody's in the buildings. But there's a high level of labor cost that goes into that. And so what we're looking to do as part of the energy performance contract is to automate the heating and ventilation systems throughout the district so that they can be computer controlled, computer activated, and our staff doesn't have to be here 18, 20 hours a day. Including in some of this work are the roof repairs, and the preparation for our solar array at the middle school. And again, you can see that 500 kilowatt solar array. Before we move forward, I just want to reference here, this $7.6 million is part of the $55 million that was noted in Proposition 2, that first big project bundle. And this is an energy performance contract. It is a legal item in New York State. And legally, these projects have to pay for themselves in 18 years or less. Our designers are seeking a conservative estimation because they're, guaranteeing a level of savings. They designed a package that can have a simple payback in 16 years. And that is inclusive of the building aid that we get from the state for any capital improvement, right? So with the building aid that we're going to get at roughly 23%, there's a simple payback of 16 years. And then for the last 2 years of the project, we would actually see a net savings of $307,000 in today's money, as estimated by the designers. As we move forward, you can see just some examples of what these things could look like. There's some pictures of lighting, windows, boilers, and other things. Please feel free to pause this presentation, as Dr. Watkins said earlier, at any point to read some of the detail in these slides as well. What's really cool about Trane Technologies is their EPCs and energy programs offer an instructional component for children as they work largely in educational facilities. And as we advance, you can see what they're calling is the BTU crew, which is very cool. It's a curriculum that allows our kids to see what we're doing in real time in their classrooms. So if you can imagine a world where we're on the other side of this project and that 500 kilowatt solar array is firing up on the roof, and our science teachers can turn on their interactive flat panels in their classrooms and bring up a dashboard to show our kids in real time how much solar energy we are harvesting that day, that week, year to date, and show the kids how the district and the building that they're sitting in is reducing the carbon footprint and its effect on the community that we're preparing them to take over one day. It is a really cool concept, and it does dovetail very nicely with some of the curriculum offerings that we have. And Dr. Watkins can certainly go into that in a little bit more detail at another time, but it is a benefit that is unique to Trane Technologies, and we're happy to have them on board because of it. On the next slide, you're going to see, and again, please feel free to pause this at any point. We also have some reference materials on our website, which I'll show you in a little bit. to just show you what that decarbonization looks like, right? That carbon footprint reduction, whether it's taking vehicles off the road, planting trees, what we're doing here, what we're proposing here today and this year for this May vote are enhancements to our campus that are not just going to help our kids, but help the community and the world around us. We really want to communicate to our students that this is important, not just for us, not just for them, but for everybody around us. And we want to do our part to make the world a better place. And this is highly illustrated on this slide and the next one. And as we continue, I'll just give you a summary of the cost, and I'll talk a little bit about the money here because from this slide, we're going to talk about regional comparisons and the financial impacts to the taxpayers, which I think people are most interested in. So as you can see, that $55 million at the top, that's our primary proposition. That's proposition 2. That includes the energy performance contract. So again, just to give you a breakdown, right? This is not directly impacting the taxpayers. We're not asking to raise your taxes to fund the entirety of this $55 million or the $77 million dollar endeavor. What we are looking to do is really get strategic with our financing. So the district is currently paying for old debt. These are old existing bonds from the high school construction, from that 2013 athletic field. We have old debt on our financial books for the tune of about $19 million. As that money comes off of our debt rolls, we would be replacing it with $19 million of new debt for these new endeavors. So that's kind of a neutral offset out of that 55. The $7.6 million for the EPC is, again, not an impact to the taxpayer because those parts of the project will pay for themselves. The district also has $10 million in a capital reserve. So that's cash we already have that we can put directly into this project. And we anticipate having between $1 and $1.5 million in cash available through our unassigned fund balance at the conclusion of this current school year that also can be allocated to the project. So when you look at the 10 million in reserves, 19 million in old debt, 7 million in cap reserve or in EPC, we're upwards of $36 million of funding that we're not coming to the taxpayers to ask to support. So when we're talking about the moderate increases to your annual taxes, the reason why they're moderate is because more than half of it is being consumed through other financial mechanisms. And again, on our frequently asked questions page, you'll see some questions about what our aid ratio is. The state is, at our current aid rate, going to fund 23% of this work, and that is regardless of how we fund it. So even the 10 million in cash that we put forward that we're not asking the taxpayers to shoulder is going to get 23% aid back from the state on it. So it's just to help us manage the overall cost of the work. We provided this slide for regional comparisons just to show, very early in our introduction, Ms. Hernandez shared that the district's buildings are largely in the condition of their original construction, with the exceptions of the minor things that were noted earlier. Since 2018, Millbrook has spent roughly $1 million on capital renovations. Since 2013, about $12 million. What you can see is the districts throughout the region have spent anywhere from $10 million to $70 million in capital improvements. Even districts that are as small or roughly around our size have spent twice as much, if not 3 times as much, in comparison. So again, not that we're looking to keep up with the Joneses or anything like that, but it's just to show that prospectively, we'd like to create a cycle of smaller ongoing work so that we don't have to come with these big ticket projects spread out, 20, 30 years apart, but to get this big chunk of work done in the next 3 to 5 years, and then create a cycle of smaller scale projects on a rolling basis to keep us in good operating condition. In this section, we're going to talk about the impact or the potential impact to taxpayers. And again, these are estimated, right? We do, our catchment area includes 6 towns in the Millbrook Central School District. Each one is equalized at a rate that's set by the state. So some of these numbers do shift a little bit depending on which of our towns you live in. And again, it's going to be based on your personal home's assessed value, which I can't speak to necessarily, but we're going to give you some parameters to help you see which category your house fits into the best. And there's some charts on these slides. Again, please feel free to pause it and take a look and try to find out which one directly relates to your home or closely relates to your home. So you're going to see 3 columns. We have enhanced star on the left, basic star in the middle, and no star on the right. So for most of our families with children in the district that live primarily at the residence in our district, you're going to have that basic star. If this is a second home or an income producing property and you don't live there full time, you're probably going to be in the no star category. If you're a retiree with no children, you may be in the enhanced star category. But for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to focus on that basic star category because it does capture, I believe, the largest portion of our tax-paying community. All the way to the left, you're going to see a list that says full value. And what that is, that's referencing the assessed value of your home. So this isn't the, I went on Zillow and my Zestimate says my house could sell tomorrow for $640,000. That's amazing and that's a wonderful thing, but you may not be paying taxes at that rate. So when you're looking at this chart, it's important to note what your assessed value of your home is based on your tax bill. And it should be pretty explicitly listed right there. And when you look at your assessed value of your home, you're going to see, you'll be able to draw a line from left to right and see what the tax implications of these projects would mean for you as a homeowner. So for example, Ms. Hernandez shared earlier that the average parcel, taxable parcel in our district is assessed at $541,000. So knowing that, we're going to use the $500,000 assessed value on the left side, and we're going to come straight across to the middle, and you'll see that for a home with an assessed value of $500,000, and again, understanding that we're not borrowing the full 55 million, right? We're using old debt, we're using cash, we're using reserves. So the portion of this project that the taxpayers would have to shoulder in terms of tax increases for a $500,000 assessed value home would be roughly $287 a year or $23.92 per month. And that's just for Proposition 2. Now we go to the next slide. Again, remember that Propositions 3 and 4 will only happen if Propositions 2 and 3 are approved respectively ahead of them. So we don't look at 2 or 3 or 4. We look at 2, 2 plus 3, or 2 plus 3 plus 4. So this slide illustrates the Proposition 2 plus Proposition 3 bundles put together. And if they are both approved, again, looking at that sort of center of the slide, you'll see a $500,000 assessed value home coming left to right in the basic star category would see a tax increase of approximately $534 a year or $44.50 per month. On our next slide, you'll see now all three propositions together. This is the full $77 million scope of work. If approved, again, if all propositions are approved together, that same $500,000 home would see an increase in annual taxes of approximately $646 or $53.83 per month. So sometimes $1 million numbers are very hard to conceptualize, certainly for those of us that don't live in $1 million homes and don't see anywhere near that in terms of our annual income. It's a lot easier to understand a couple of $1,000s, a couple of $100s than it is to really conceptualize the impact of a $77 million project. And so that's why we provided these slides for you to just show you that even for $77 million worth of work, a $500,000 home could support that work for less than $700 a year. So in just some summary and next steps, right? We're really looking for our community to support what is effectively the largest and most necessary capital project plan in the district's modern history since our three main buildings were constructed in the mid 50s and 60s. It's all about improvements to function and how we do what we do. It's really making sure that we can bring kids to the school every single day, that we don't have to lose a school day because of the condition of our buildings. And so we're looking at modernizations. We're certainly looking at enhancements. These are not the pie in the sky, perfect school designs. They're very much attainable, but we wanted to do better than just a basic in-kind replacement. So we want to do this so that it lasts the next 30 to 50 years. And really doing it to affect children. And on the next slide, we'll show you what some of those effects are for kids. So we included this data just because, a lot of us can speak to, sure, a building in better shape is better for everybody. That's kind of an intuitive statement, but there's actual data to support it. And what you can see on this slide is some of those data points. And at the bottom of this slide, there are links or URLs to websites where this data was pulled from. These are studies that were conducted or sponsored by the federal EPA. And just some real important highlights to share. Indoor environments are associated with a variety of health plans or health symptoms and a decline in student performance in reasoning, typing, and math. And coming out of a pandemic, this is certainly something that a lot of us can understand, right? When children are experiencing respiratory challenges or buildings that have physical challenges, it affects learning. And that's a statistical fact. Schools without a major maintenance backlog see an average daily attendance improvement of 4 to 5 students per 1,000. And a lower dropout rate of 10 to 13 students per 1,000. In a district with 800 kids, I mean, that's 3 or 4 kids that are deciding whether or not to come to school on a given day based on the condition of the school that they're going to. We say it all the time here as administrators. For some of our kids, our school buildings are the nicest place they go all day long. It's the safest place. And sometimes it's the only warm or comfortable place they go. And the better the condition of that school building is, the more likely we're going to get them to show up. And the first part of educating kids is getting them into the building, right? Beyond that, evidence also suggests that improving outdoor ventilation can improve student and teacher performance, including increasing test scores. One study showed that classrooms with a higher outdoor air ventilation rate received 14 to 15% increased scores on standardized tests. So it's not just about getting them here, but when they're here, if the building breathes better, it helps them breathe better, they actually perform better. So there's a direct correlation between the building condition, the ventilation systems, and student performance. And the last bullet that we shared is just underscoring the fact that honoring and respecting and complying with the Americans with Disabilities Act is not an option. It is a federal mandate. Furthermore, the state, and Dr. Watkins alluded to this earlier, the state is fully within their rights to deny funding and support for any project that does not primarily address the needs of the Americans with Disabilities Act and any compliance therewith. So the state may tell us that that Proposition 2 piece has to happen first or has to be at the top of the list when everything else is considered, because the state does take that very seriously, as we do as well. But it's certainly something that's not negotiable, especially when it comes to large-scale renovation projects. So going forward, we're going to be hosting another couple of these information sessions and more information to follow when they are finalized. Our Board of Education will be adopting resolutions to formalize these propositions at our April 2nd vote tentatively. And then we're going to be distributing even more information about the projects themselves and the scope. This presentation will be on our website, as well as a number of supporting documents. So the slide deck that you're seeing us share today is also on the site, and as well as some frequently asked questions slides as well. And just as a reminder, the vote for this project is happening at the same time as our general vote, our general fund vote and general election on May 21st between 12 p.m. and 9 p.m. This is the part of the program where we typically ask for questions from the community. So please, if you have any questions, please feel free to email us. You can email us at the district info button on our website. You can also email district.info@millbrookcsd.org. Those correspondences come directly to the senior administrators here on this call. We'd be more than happy to engage with our folks and answer any questions you have. And if there are any questions that do come up, we can add them to our frequently asked questions page so that the rest of our community members can benefit from this information as well. Before we close out, we just want to show you the next slide to say that, or to illustrate where on our website the buttons are for the capital project information.
So that will be in the presentation that is on our website, and it will provide that information for you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Watkins.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your
For
attention.
tuning in.